Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. I'm joined today by ASU swimmer Grant House. Grant, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well today. It's been a pretty good start to the day, and glad to be on here.
Yeah. So I figured I wanted to start with our mutual connection, which was that we both grew up with older brothers.
Yeah.
And our older brothers actually happened to swim together for a time at Purdue. But I wanted to kind of start the conversation with, your entry into swimming and how your older brother, kind of had an effect on you in swimming.
Yeah. So I guess to start a little bit before Kyle was my mom and dad both swam, and they were both coaches. I think by the time I came around, they were about coaches for 20-ish years, 20 plus. So I have an older sister too, Ashley, and then Kyle, my older brother. And so we're pretty separated in age gaps. My sister's 37. Kyle is about to turn 31 on the 1st of June, and then I'm 21 now. So a pretty large age gap, but by the kind of going into the connection with Kyle too is I started swimming competitively around, I think, the age of 7, and kind of always just gravitated towards swimming again. Played some other some basketball camps, other sports here and there, but kind of always just kept coming back to swimming, no matter what it was. And so at that time, like I said, the age gap, Kyle was, I guess, almost but pseudo father figure for me as well. Both my parents, I just called them Monday night and had a great call with them about how much they meant to me and the role models they've been in my life. But Kyle was closer to my age than my father for me, obviously, and we really connected. I don't think I'd be the person I am today without him. So he was someone who always got me intrigued to swim. He was the reason I wanted to beat him. I wanted to be better than him. I always enjoyed hanging out with him. I thought his friends were really fun to be around. They were always nice to me, always pushed me, always challenged me. And it was just like the environment and the person I aspired to be. So basically my whole childhood was just kind of chasing him around and riding his coattails if I could, and just be like, I don't know, like the old adage of be like Mike for Michael Jordan was be like Kyle for me. So I think it's pretty comical now to I've kind of eclipsed him in a good amount of swimming now, but a lot of the like emotional maturity and mental maturity that he has is really inspiring to me, and just how he carries himself each day. But it's been fun to learn with him along the way, experience different things as I've gotten older and can handle more experiences, and together especially, and just forming our own relationships or own special relationship and experiences rather than just him kind of taking care of me, but we can kind of go along with it together.
Yeah. Was him leaving for college a big deal for you?
Yeah, I definitely say it was a bit bizarre. My sister leaving wasn't like that crazy because I was so much younger. But when Kyle left, I definitely remember when he went to Purdue. It wasn't too far away, but I remember like the week after, like, why can we not just go see Kyle like this weekend? Because to me, I mean, my parents told me it was like 3.5 hours away for us living in Indiana. But it's just, that's not how things work all the time. Don't always get what you want, obviously, but being about 10 at the time when he went, I didn't exactly understand that to the fullest. So that was definitely like a dynamic that I had to kind of grow through and learn. And that's when I really started to find, from what I can remember, like my own personal friend group and my peer group as well. And Um, Interestingly enough, it's kind of something I reflect on a lot. Like I enjoyed my peers as well, but it was just I always just have a tendency to gravitate towards an older peer group, people who are a couple years beyond my age, solely because of how like embedded and integrated I was with my brother. And even like you mentioned, when I went up to our brothers, I mean, I hung out with Kyle and a little bit around the college guys as well, as much as they would tolerate me and as much as I was allowed, of course. But um, it was definitely hard to have that like immediate motivation, immediate role model out of my life. But I think it was like I had enough at that point to where okay, like I have this direction I want to go and want to be, or at least what I thought and wanted to aspire to be, and it wasn't like it was gone. We'd still Skype like our family would every now and then. We'd still see them for almost every home dual meet. We'd go up on the weekends. My parents made that work, and yeah, so he was still heavily embedded in my life for sure. And he made sure of that, made sure to not kind of take a sidestep, even though he was going to college, and even though he was not going to be in the house every day. But it was definitely different, like you stated, and from seeing him at the pool every day to going to the high school that he went to, and then ultimately going to a completely separate high school and really creating like my own path around when I went to St. Xavier in Ohio, rather than just the high school my sister had gone to, Kyle had gone to, and my parents had both coached and taught at for 30 plus years at that point. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, what inspired that decision of kind of, veering off towards St. Xavier?
Yeah, I think for me it was pretty much. Well, I joined the Cincinnati Marlins at that time. My mom had taken a job offer from them earlier, about I think maybe a year or a season before I switched over, and so she got the position at Northern Kentucky University, and that was one of the satellite sites we trained at, and that was a pretty good distance away from where we lived in Indiana at the time. It was about a 45-minute drive, um, just there. And so every day after school, I get picked up and drive to NKU. I don't. I think my practice time kind of changed a little bit as I got into get different groups. But as I connected with the older peer group pretty routinely, and due to my level and my competitive aspect of swimming, I always kind of wanted to be with the older guys. I always wanted to race the older guys. I had the ability to race them and work with them. Maybe not strength wise, but ultimately in the pool, speed and performance wise, I could keep up and could kind of keep creeping towards them and getting to that level from where I was at. So when I saw that and I was spending a lot of time with those guys, they were most of them, 75% of them were people at St. Xavier. They were, I mean, the Marlins main site is at St. Xavier Keating Natatorium. That's obviously where the school has their practices, competitions. So it kind of almost like fell into itself. And I think my parents maybe saw that. And I never really asked to go, but my parents kind of brought it up to me. My mom's brothers had gone to St. X, and I didn't know that until I was already heading there. But it was kind of a discussion of, they saw how I was progressing. They saw where I was at in my life and development, and they wanted me for what they saw, to have a better developmental environment and to at least grow into more resources than maybe my sister and brother had. And they thought that was a better opportunity for me at the time. So I know they had Kyle. They had that same conversation with Kyle once or twice about going to St. Xavier, but he just didn't. It wasn't as pressing for them. It wasn't that lifestyle wasn't there in front of him. He wasn't with the Marlins. He was still coaching swimming for my mom and dad, and so it just wasn't around as prevalent as it was for me going to Keating every Saturday for our group practices, and then seeing the guys being on the same team, racing them every meet, every day. And so I think that's really what culminated is my parents saw how much I enjoyed it, much I enjoyed those individuals there, and especially the coaches. When I mean they saw me around, they'd always make sure to talk with me and whatnot. And they were coaches on the Marlins as well, so it really just fell hand in hand. I'm very fortunate because I think as much as Kyle was, that environment at St. X was hugely profound, maybe beyond even what I realized, to developing who I am today and still carry the characteristics that I learned there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive into that, if you're okay with it, because
Yeah.
the St. X in the swimming community has this huge lore, of being this powerhouse Ohio swim team. And, I've heard about the Ohio State meet in particular, and how, and just, someone has told me before, like, that's the most exciting, exhilarating environment to be at in terms of like a high school swim meet or a swim meet period. And so I would love to get your perspective on what swimming at St. X was like.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was quite the honor. I mean, as an alumni now, I can proudly say, um, it's very nostalgic to think about it, even just a couple of years removed. But I remember it's just such a great community of people who care and want you to be your best self. No one there, whether they reprimand you for something, whether it's they make you work harder or give you extra work to do, or whatever it is, no one there wants you to fail. They all want to just push you to what they either see that you can succeed as or challenge you to succeed as and improve yourself. And that's something that I struggled with at first, especially going into a new environment, because yes, I did know a couple people on the swim team that were there, but those were seniors or juniors, and I was a freshman, and I wasn't going to be seeing them in my classes. So I remember I went to St. X my first year knowing one person in my entire class of like 420 kids. So that was pretty challenging, and definitely took some. Luckily, I was always a social butterfly, my mom would say, but so it didn't take too long to make friends. But it was definitely daunting and kind of scary some days. Like I don't really know anyone here other than those seniors and juniors who were kind of like brothers to me. But like you were stating, the experience is pretty surreal. I remember after I just took my entrance exam, like my placement exam, to see if I one could get into St. X, and two to like where you get dropped in classes. The guys had all like known I was going to go to St. X at this point, barring any unfortunate situations with not getting in. And like 4 or 5 of them saw me come back from the testing that Saturday because I had to miss practice and I had to swim with a different group. And they like got out of their workout when I walked back. They're like, "Oh, how'd you think you did? How'd it go? Was it hard? All this? Are you going to be joining the team?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, but I thought that was so cool." The coach is like barking at them to get back, like into the workout that they just hopped out of. So, but that's just how much they cared already, and cared for my character. And so kind of continuing on that trend, I remember my freshman year, I'd obviously heard the same hype and excitement you had. I had fortunately been able to go to, I think, the Canton Viking winter invite, in December. And that was to give my class that I think we ended up graduating 11, not 11 total, I think 15 or 16 in total, but 11 of us went to compete at a Division I program for swimming, which is, I think, just remarkable, almost unprecedented. And
Yeah.
That freshman year, they knew what we were capable of, and so they wanted to get us experience in that environment just for 3 months down the line in February for the state meet. And so for our state qualifier, we go sectionals 1 week. Then the next week you qualify for districts. And then after that you qualify for state. And so sectionals is if you're a year-round swimmer, essentially just kind of don't get disqualified, get it through. And that's all my coaches told me. So I remember we recorded all of our races that day. And then the next, before or after practice, we went and watched them as a team. But like, I stayed on the block like 2 seconds after the starter went. I stayed on like for relays, like after they touched the wall and like looked up, like I went. So it was a little exaggerated, but I didn't know at the time. I was like, all right, so I gotta be extra careful. And I didn't want to be the guy that they told and ruin something. So like you said, because St. X had this huge reputation and renowned aspect. And in my freshman year, I don't know why it kind of correlated like that, but we weren't supposed to win by any means at the state meet. And this was I think this was going to snap like I think we're over 40 at this point, total state championships, but that would have been the 7th year in a row we would have won. And so we were supposed to get like second or third because we just didn't have what people thought to be like the renowned athletes we did in history's past. So we go into districts. I swim really well at districts, and kind of get all my goal times I'd set at the beginning of the season. So I remember getting an interview from Marty Hubble, and I was like, yeah, he's like, so what's the plan for next week? And I don't know the full interview exactly anymore, but I just remember I was like, well, that was my goal time by like a second, so I guess I'll try to go faster. But it was just that simple for me. I was a part of a great team, a great environment, and we get to the state meet, and everyone's again telling me like, don't worry, it's going to be exciting. Like, you're not going to have to worry about that. It's crazy. So I was like pretty like looking forward to it. And at Ohio State, we do prelims Friday for Division I, and then finals the next day. So I finished the session. I was like, oh, this is cool. It's pretty much almost like an arena around the pool. Like 3 out of the 4 sides are covered around you, from behind the starting blocks along the right side. And then at the end of the pool, there's all stands going up about 20 or 25 rows just filled with people on top of each other. And so after the session, I went up to one of the guys I've known since I was 11 or 10 in the Marlins, another St. X guy, Mitchell Fry. And I was like, man, like, you were so right. Like, that was really cool. Like, this energy is insane. And he like laughed at me, and he's like, dude, he's like, this is nothing. like in retrospect, the stands weren't even like half packed. And I thought it was like, cool. It was just parents. Like, it was just some of the swimmers. But when finals came the next day, it was just like you had your headphones in, noise canceling over the ear, just on full blast. And to the point where, I mean, you're behind the blocks, and it was so new to me, because most of us have been to football games in grade school, high school, college, for your school, or maybe somewhere else, or you've at least seen pictures of it at schools. But they always have this huge student section, and for St. X, we have like 100+ people come to support the swim team, like in Canton, Ohio. Like I think it's like a 3-hour trip, and they'll come up, and it's not all just swimmers. We have a really big team, like sometimes 100+ total members. But there's guys from school that come because they hear about how exciting it is too, and they're like, oh, like, I'm free this weekend. I'll go up there and enjoy some friends and get rowdy for my school. And it's just a cool asset that I've never seen for the sport of swimming. Yeah. Let alone, but for one individual sport within swimming. And so when you're standing behind the blocks, at least for me, like, they'd start chanting St. X and other cheers and whatnot. You could like feel it like vibrating your body. You could feel like the pressure of the noise. And that was all you could hear. Like, basically what I think of it as is just support and encouragement for a bigger cause than just yourself. You just keep hearing that, you keep getting inundated with that, and then everyone else goes up around you, but that one's like just keeps hitting you because they line up right behind the blocks. They get the prime seating every time. And but yeah, it really is, I mean, one of the most exciting meets I've ever been to in my life. I think beyond just being with the raw competitors of like a nationals or like an international meet, Hands down, the environment was far beyond anything I'd ever known thus far, and definitely in like my top three, especially that first year, experiences I've ever had, and it really never subsided any year. It only just got more and more, and you kind of prepared for it, and you knew it was coming. But that first year was really surreal and special because I'd never had that experience yet. But each year it's still, you get behind the blocks, you'd still have the butterflies, you'd still have the nerves and the excitement from like hearing the crowd and hearing your support system, family, friends, team members who didn't qualify for state or didn't qualify for finals. And it was really neat. And not to belittle the competition by any means, every year I think in Ohio it actually got harder and harder, and more depth. I can't tell you the amount of Division I athletes that over my 4 years, Division I athletes in high school went on to Division I schools as well and Division IIs. So I think that's like a testament to just how intense and depth wise the state of Ohio is for the sport of swimming. So it's very profound, I think.
What are, when you look back on swimming at St. X, you know, do you have one or two highlights or stories that you're like, you know, these are the best, or these are my favorite?
I think I definitely I think there's a couple, some more inappropriate than others, but I think one of them is that freshman year at state. It was just I just laughed because of how, I guess, naive I was, or whatever it is, and how simple it was. And that's really something that I think a lot of our experiences kind of get us away from sometimes as we get older, getting too serious about it. And it's something that always like kind of draws me back. I mean, my freshman year, I had the biggest difference in grade differential of freshman to senior, if that makes sense, and like sophomore to senior, junior. So freshman to senior. So I had like all my older brothers. I had all the guys I had always wanted to be on a team with, even if it was just for 1 year. And so that was really neat. And like I said, we weren't supposed to win that year. And so I went as a freshman. The first event, the 200 freestyle. I think I still never figured out the high school lineup. I'm ashamed to admit that, but I was there, and I swam what they needed me to, and I did my best. So that was what I had to do. But after the 2 medley, saw the team do really well in that, get excited off that, take that energy into my race, go into the 200 freestyle. Like I said, my goal was to go faster. Didn't know what the expectation, no expectation. And went like 2.5 seconds faster than my goal time had been. So ended up winning the 200 freestyle my first year, going away. And then the next event was the 100 freestyle, because that's where they needed me most. Mm-hmm. And the way for us, there's a break. And so after the 100 fly, there goes like 15-20 minute break into the 100 fly. And so, or vice versa, I think I said that backwards. But basically, in between the break, I could kind of go to the pool, side of the pool, and like see my family. They were smiling and just saying anything. I could see friends like waving, teammates, mm-hmm. and it was just it was just so, I think, comical to look back on. Like I have so many pictures from people of me just like laughing, not even worrying about like, oh yeah, you just won state, like this and that. Just like, no, okay, like the next one I'll just keep swimming. So the 100 freestyle comes, I go faster than I even thought I would again by like a second, especially in a shorter sprint. End up winning that as a freshman too. And so
what'd you go to win that?
My freshman year, I won a 44.2. That was 2014, maybe, yeah, 2014. When I was 15 years old. And I thought that was more impressive than my 200 free, which was like a 135 at the time. But like I said, I didn't expect any of this to happen. So from that, I have like kind of a quickish turnaround into our 200 freestyle relay, which of the 3 relays in high school is like my school's renowned worst relay. Up until of late, fortunately, but just every year it's like, who can we just toss on there to salvage something, a top 8 finish maybe. And so we put together a pretty good like group that year. It was decent, but they were like, well, Grant's going to be on it now because he just did the 100. I don't think I was supposed to be on it, but he did pretty well on that. And so they anchored me. And I remember I went in 7th, and I don't even know what my fastest split was. I don't even know if it was below a 21 at this point, but I ended up going in 19.7, anchoring, and we got second. It wasn't a win, but it was just really cool for me. That was a really neat experience. I love like the pressure of that scenario. Like I always tell Coach Bowman or my coaches at St. X or club, they'd be like, oh, like if you had a choice, where would you want to be? And it's like, well, I like to phrase it as I either like to start the party or end it. So I'll either go first or last. And because I just really love those and that situation. And then we go on to the last relay, the 4x100 freestyle, and kind of same situation. We basically were told before the relay, you just have to you can't get below 4th and we'll win the meet. And so that's kind of what we understood. They're like, don't disqualify, don't leave early, just do what you guys have been doing all meet and swim well and just be smart. So I guess this was probably one of the like memories I'll think about most is that relay, because of what we didn't have to do, but every member on that relay did. So the way it went was, I'm pretty sure it went like most experienced to least experienced technically. So we had 1 senior, 1 junior, 1 sophomore, 1 freshman. And so I'm pretty sure it went senior, junior, sophomore, and then me, freshman. And so I thought that was cool to just have one of every class, like kind of culminating our whole efforts that year. Cause like, yes, I did win 2 events and helped the relay, but like if I had just swam the meet for St. X, like I obviously couldn't have won the meet. It took a whole team and culture and family effort. And so I think that being the last event, that being the way we kind of closed out things, really culminated it. And so like our senior, Mikey Montag, he was probably the slowest on the relay, but he had a great state meet and thus far and really like kind of surprised everyone. And it was awesome to see. And so he was kind of a last minute add-on to the relay, I think like the night before, or maybe that morning too. Mm-hmm. And he, on his leg, he went like a 1.5 seconds faster than he'd ever gone before. And so my other teammates did great too. They went faster than their individuals. I think one of my guys didn't even get top 16, but his time on the relay would have gotten him like 4th or 5th. After not doing that, like he just stepped up huge.
Yeah.
And so I'm going anchor, and I have a decent lead, and I guess no, it actually wasn't a decent. I think I was behind by like 2 body lengths, and I was like, okay, like and it was just us 2 teams. Like everyone else was like a half pool length behind, if not a whole length. And I was like, all right, so I just don't have to disqualify. I don't have to get 5th. And I was like, pretty solid spot to be in. And I was like, yeah, I could just kind of like coast it. And I remember seeing like or that I should just do that, because that was like what the coaches had emphasized towards us. And I saw like my teammates get out, and I saw Mikey, and I saw like how excited he was. And I was like, I just kind of just said like, screw it. And I think I definitely like way more intense than I should have been for my coach's liking probably. Didn't break early or anything, but probably should have been a little bit more cautious. And after the first lap, we were in the lead. I came off the first wall, dove in 2 body lengths behind, came up almost even. And after the first wall, I mean, it was done. Like everything else was just maintain, which I could do because I'd won the 100. And I looked at it as an opportunity. Like I wanted to win. Like I didn't want to just, and I wanted to dominate. Like I didn't want to just, oh yeah, we got first by a couple hundreds. Like I wanted to kind of bury it and make it a statement of like what we were here to do, what I was there to do, and to ultimately start and culminate the process and journey that I went to continue. But for that team, like I saw how much it mattered to Mikey. I saw how much it mattered to Mitchell, and I think Matt Slaby as well. And it was just very empowering and surreal to kind of be the final swim of the meet, the last heat, the last event, and the last swimmer, and go out in exciting fashion and win the meet when we had kind of already, like, I guess, won it, like I explained, but it hadn't been finished yet. And so to take be the culminating piece of all that was really neat as someone who had just stepped into that culture, like we've been talking about at St. X, and kind of continue that storied history and help be a part of that process. So I'd say those are two of my like most fond memories. There's some travel trips to and from on a bus. I always enjoyed. That was the first time I'd taken like team trips on a bus. So I always enjoyed that, and hearing stories from the older guys at the time, sharing memories with singing songs, whether to or from, getting back. I remember there was like there was one time we got back at like 2 a.m. because there was like some mistake, and there was an issue with our van or bus. And I remember we went to this like, I guess, food court at this mall to get dinner, and one of the guys got his food. We all did, and then he got like three cinnamon rolls, and and he put them in his bag or something. And over the trip, he like kind of was eating them, and at the end, he had like 3 cinnamon rolls left or whatnot, and we all were like, okay, you got to eat this now. Like, you paid for it. I think some other people paid for it, but in the matter of like 5 minutes, he ate like all 3, and was just, it was disgusting.
Oh, man.
But it was like 2 a.m. We just got back from a meet. We were all tired, and somehow we were able to like just be ooh-rah and like cheering him on. And it was just a funny memory to have. Very, very simple, very, very adolescent, but it's definitely something I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So to switch gears a little bit, so you have, we've gone through your highlights of St. X. In 2015, you went to the World Junior Championships that summer.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, so that was very exciting for me. That was my second year, so my sophomore year. And so I remember having the discussion with my coach, Jim Brower, and we had this other former swimmer, David Moscow, and there was always kind of, at least in St. X's history, there was like one or two, there were several individuals, but like kind of not a once in a generation, but like one that stood above the rest kind of. And I think what it really emphasized it was like we'd have our national championship title, the mythical national championship, state championship banners all over the pool. Mm-hmm. And then we had like the NISCA national champion individual a couple times. And so I think one was Joey Hudipole, one was David Moscow. I know I'm missing like 2. I'm kind of ashamed of myself for not remembering them right now. I can see it up on the wall, but bottom line, we had like 2 or 3, and it was like 97, or it was like 70s or early 80s, then 90s, then early 2000s, but we hadn't had one for the 2010s yet. And every day when I saw that, I was like, I want to be like those guys. I want to be that level and help this program get to that level again. Because I think the last time we had done that was like 2002 or something, early 2000s again with David. And so Coach Brower had always told me about David. His sophomore year was his sophomore summer of I think he called it sophomore summer of travel. And he's like, I think that's what yours is going to be now too, Grant. And so I didn't really understand it at the time, but that summer we went to San Antonio to qualify for the meet. That was the qualifier for Junior Worlds, and several other meets. I believe so. I'm not exactly sure, but I remember the first night or the first day, I only had like 2 or 3 cuts. I think I had like the 400 meter freestyle, the 200 meter freestyle, and something else. I think I time trialed the 100 freestyle and the 200 IM, I think. And first day was the 400 freestyle. That was pretty rough. It was really a pretty bad race for me. And then the next day was kind of just like trying to figure out what was going on still. And I wasn't with my coach. My dad was actually with me because my coach for Countryside Torpedoes was at YMCA Nationals, where he had 20-plus swimmers. And we were like, well, my dad can come take care of me down here. He's been a coach, obviously. He helped coach my YMCA team as well, assistant. Mm-hmm. So that just worked out better. And I remember calling him, and we were talking. I was like, yeah, I don't know what happened. And he's like, then don't worry about it and just focus on the next one and just have some fun with this one. So it's kind of what I did. And the morning swim wasn't the best. It's still pretty frustrating, but I got into the C final. I think at this point they had an 18 and under heat for nationals, which was specified for the youngins. Yeah. And I was second alternate, or I wasn't even supposed to be in it, and I got scratched in. I got scratched into, I don't know if it was lane 8, but lane 8 or 0 or 1 of the outside lane. And on the other side, the guy who also got scratched in was Joey Reelman, or Michael Reelman, who's also from Ohio. So that was really cool as well too, to have 2 guys in that. And I think Jeff Newkirk, Caleb was in that. I don't really remember who else, but I was like, all right, like, let's just go. And I knew Caleb was in it, and obviously he has his stature now and status, and it wasn't it was less than, but he was obviously still a big name, still a fast guy. And I was like, I want to be the best one in this heat. I was like, I don't care what happens in the A final or B final. I was like, I got in here by luck, kind of, honestly. I was like, so there's nothing to lose. And so Caleb did his thing, took it out in typical fashion, and fortunately the race came together for me, and I ended up winning the heat out of the C final. And due to like the qualifying criteria, I don't think anyone else in the B final or A final was 18 and under. So I was I think there's 2, Maxime Rooney and Grant Schultz were, I think, in the A or the B, because Maxime had a phenomenal race. I think he set the junior world record at that nationals. But bottom line is, I qualified to go to Singapore that race. The rest of the meet wasn't that great for me, but qualified in that race. I was the first official member of the team at that point that they had like told, at least, or that they knew was going. So that's when I met Mitch Dalton. That he's the man. That bottom line. I was very glad to be a part of his like first junior team, and that was his first junior trip, as well as Jack Roach's last trip. And so that was really, really special. I know we had quite a few talks, Mitch and I, and we stay in touch consistently still. And I was beyond stoked to see him get the position at UT down in your part of the country, Austin. So I thought no better man for the job than Mitch Dalton. And I only see great things for him there, but I was very fortunate to kind of start my relationship with him and Jack Roach as well. Kind of a changing and passing of the guard, if you may, passing of the torch for the junior level, I guess 18 and under USA Swimming. And that was pretty special to be a part of, to see those relationships between Jack and Mitch, and what they were giving to the team we had at that time. So there were obviously for any junior world team, I'm sure there's going to be everyone on that team is going to be a stud. But again, it seemed like that group of people was pretty special compared to like, I don't, it's at least to me and my bias, obviously, but some of the best swimmers we have today, like Reese Whitley, Ryan Hoffer, Sean Grisham, Michael Jensen, Austin Katz, and that's just the men's side. I think women's side was Claire Adams, Kennedy Lohman, Lauren Case, like just to say Beta Nelson, just to say a few. But I remember every single race was super exciting to watch. It was very surreal to be on the relay with Maxime, Grant, and Sean Grisham at night. I thought was a pretty big honor and privilege again, because in the morning I was on it and I let off, and I think I even went slower than I did at nationals and prelims, which was already a bad swim. And so I was like, well, like Austin Katz was on the morning relay too, and I don't know if I think he beat me by like a 10th with a relay swing or something like that. Mm-hmm. But he had the faster time, and in my mind, if you have the faster time, you go on to be the fastest relay. And so I guess since my performance at San Antonio had indicated that I would go faster by a pretty significant margin at night, they were kind of banking on that and that the coach had known me. So I remember Sean and I were two of the last people to get back to the hotel that day. And the head coach hops on the elevator, like stops in like dramatic fashion, like you see in a movie, like holds the door, gets in.
Sure.
And I'm like, sweet, here it comes. Like, I'm going to be told that I'm not going to be on the relay. Like, this kind of stinks, but it is what it is. I want America to have the fastest relay they can. I help be a part of it, and I'll do better in the future. I know that. I'll make sure of that. And so the head coach looks at both of us, and he's like, just so you guys know, Sean, you're going to go third tonight, and Grant, you're going to anchor the relay. And so didn't expect to hear that. And then he got off on the elevator on his floor, and then we went up to our floor. And I was kind of freaking out because I didn't expect to be swimming that night. I'd done everything as if I was going to be there because that's how I've been taught, so fortunate for that. But I remember I didn't sleep. I couldn't take my nap. I always take a nap. Couldn't sleep. And I could just hear what my dad would always tell me if like I always napped, but he said, in case you ever didn't, rest is rest. As long as you're relaxing, you're recovering. And that's like all I could think about when I was in the bed. I was like, oh, I can't nap. Like, oh, this. And I was like, but I'll be good for tonight. And so we get to the pool and all that stuff. And I think Maxime leads off, then Grant, and then Sean and I go. And that was the relay order. And I cannot say enough about Grant Schultz and Maxime. They're huge mentors in life for me. They're huge confidants. I think at the time, Grant was more of that, I think, towards me than Maxime. And it's kind of flip-flopped a little bit. But anytime I see them, anytime I talk with them is with a lot of respect, and I commend them as the individuals they've become. But they really helped me just kind of grasp the moment and be present with it and have fun with it. Looking back, I wouldn't expect anything different from two Cali boys. But they just provided a little comical relief for me, a couple smiles, a couple laughs, some confidence. And I remember, I think the thing that finally like put me over the edge was I was like kind of spazzing out that I had to go pee before the race. And we were in the ready room and we weren't allowed to leave. And I was like, Grant, I got to go. And he's like, don't worry, dude, just hold it and it makes you swim faster, I promise. And so I was like, oh, sweet. Like, again, like being naive as I was in the moment, like not thinking, I was like, oh, sweet, I'll just go faster because I have to pee. So I anchored, and I think I anchored against, at the time, Kyle Chalmers. And that was pretty funny as well too, because he had just raced Maxime in like the 100 and the 200 individually, and I saw those. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, like Maxime did this, I can do this, I want to do it. And I think I went in with like a 2.5 or a good amount of lead. And I was like, I want to make sure I maintain this. My goal was to maintain it, make sure nothing again didn't disqualify it, and to dominate by as much as I could, and to not be the slowest leg on the relay. And so, touched the wall. Didn't know if I had accomplished that or not, but knew we'd won. Saw that we set the junior world record at the time, which I think stood for like 2 years. So I was kind of happy with that. Like there had been a couple goes at it, so that was like egotistically satisfying, I guess, or pridefully
Sure.
satisfying. And especially to see where all those guys are at now. I think I was like the third fastest split on the relay. So I just beat one person, but that was my goal, and it was kind of like a moment where it really showed me how much your mental strength could be. Like I said, I didn't want to be the slowest. I didn't lose the race. We finished by the same amount of time, I think, if not more than I went in with. And like thanks to the guys who went before me, like that wouldn't have been set up if that wasn't the case. But that was a really neat experience. I remember Jack Roach at the end saying a lot of the time, like he was saying, is like this is his last hurrah with the junior team, and that kind of like intimacy of going on the trips, being the head of the program for United States Swimming, and that he'd still be involved, but was kind of taking a step down and be more involved with anything national team related, more so. But one thing that really stuck with me was that in our last meeting, they were giving out medals. And I remember Austin Katz, who was a part of the 4x2, and I'm not sure who else was, but that morning they made a point to like give all the preliminary relay swimmers their medals first, because the finals wouldn't have happened if they hadn't done their job in the morning, which I thought was a really neat sentiment to give to those athletes, because I know I've been in the spot and been a teammate or confidant for someone who feels like they don't contribute at all because they didn't make the finals relay. And it's a hard conversation to have sometimes and perspective to shift, but it is very valid. Like it's a two-part event, two-part series. And they're just even though they might not be the culminating touch on the wall, like we talked about it earlier as well, they were a vital part in it all happening. So that was really neat. And getting to my point finally is Jack said a lot of times this is the pinnacle for some of the swimmers that come on these trips, whether you're 15, 14 as a guy or a girl, whether you're 18, about to go to college as a guy or a girl. He said, don't let this be the ending or the culminating portion of your career. He said, let this be the spark and the beginning of what you want to become and what it can become. He's like, don't let this experience be the limiting factor. He's like, you guys and girls all have the tools to go on and become Olympians. You all have the tools to go on and represent America proudly in other events internationally as well, and your clubs and your universities in the future, your high schools as well. So take that with respect and take that forward and build off this foundation you have right now. And so coming from a school like St. X, already 2 years into that, like hearing that from someone as renowned as Coach Roach was like so profound to me, and something that really helped me be a leader moving forward for St. X, for my club team. I was probably a better leader for St. X than my club team, but it flowed better. It flowed easier. And but that was a really neat experience, especially having Mitch and being kind of a continual sentiment throughout all these meets and throughout time, not losing them, or if I needed to call Coach Roach a couple times, like in the next year, I did. Mitch would check in. I was on the junior team as well, which like the national camp, I think the year before 2015 actually. So that was really neat to have that experience in 2015 in Singapore. It's definitely one that I don't take for granted, and it's pretty surreal. I think occasionally if it comes up in like a memory, I think the last 3 years or so, Grant Schultz, Maxime, and Sean and I had like a group chat that we sent like a picture in right when we took it. and it'll like pop up on a memory, and we'll kind of like send it to each other, like, hey, like hope you guys are doing well. So that's a cool group to have. I mean, I talk with Maxime almost every day, and Sean and Grant whenever I see them, and reach out when I'm thinking of them. But it's a cool sentiment to be able to share with those guys, and one that makes me smile a lot for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so, then let's move on to kind of where you're at now. You go to Arizona State. Um, what has your experience there been like? Maybe can you talk us through, the process of taking an Olympic red shirt, and then and how you're doing, through this quarantine period?
Yeah. So I think after that, it was kind of just after 2015, it was kind of just gearing up for what at the time was Olympic trials, and then also pushing forward into my recruiting process. And everything for me was just like really geared towards swimming. St. X is very prestigious academically, but I kind of could handle that. I felt like that was easy to do with discipline. Not that the schoolwork was easy, but just staying disciplined and on top of things was good. But 2016 Olympic trials was pretty rough for me. Not my finest moment by any means, but it helped, I think, catapult a learning curve that was almost exponentially raised after that, and really made me value looking for a college that saw me as a whole person and a whole individual, and really changed my recruiting direction, I think, quite drastically from where I was looking, who I was talking with, how much interest I was showing to certain places, and valuing it more as who can I become as Grant House rather than who can I become as the swimmer only. And I'm very, very grateful to have that, I guess, learning opportunity, or realization after the fact. But coming to college, I think it was ultimately between um, University of Texas, UT, Queens University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Arizona State. So my brother was at Purdue for 2 years and then transferred to Queens University for the remainder of his time. And that's where I kind of had interest with them. I'd gone down there a couple times, a couple weekends, conferences. I'd gone down there for like a week to stay with him, and I got to train with like SwimMac, and that was really neat. So I met some of his friends again, hung out with them, met some people down at SwimMac, and that was just a great environment. They were, again, so welcoming and opening to me, even though I wasn't. I mean, Kyle was the guy there; he was the main guy, and so they still welcomed me with open arms as if I was all their younger brothers and parts of their family. So I was very appreciative of that, and that sentiment carried very far into my recruiting process even. But when I ultimately chose to come to Arizona State, very difficult decision, just because all three schools were so phenomenal in my eyes. But when I got here, I remember coming on the trip and I left, and I was like, this is the place. And I just the community was so open, so kind, so again, so welcoming to me. So for someone who didn't know anyone but one person out here, really, Christian Lorenz. I grew up with him in Indiana swimming, and he was a big factor in me coming out here, talking to me at 2016 Olympic trials, as well as Patrick Park. But those guys were two people that kind of shared, at the time I didn't realize this, but the sense of what everyone else out there is like. And so coming into ASU, I was really excited. Obviously not obviously, but the year before they'd had a very improved year, and I was hoping to add on to that my first year and continue that trend that I watched in person at IUPUI for the national championship. I was able to go up there because I lived like an hour and a half away. So
Yeah.
being the swim nerd that Kyle and I are, we were like, well, we gotta go see it. And that was a renowned and historical meet itself too that year. Will Cone in his 200 breaststroke, I think it was like 147. And I mean, in classic IUPUI fashion, it doesn't disappoint either. So
Yeah.
I think there was a tie for 200 IM at the time. But it was just amazing swim after amazing swim. And it was really cool to see friends you had known, role models you looked up to. My mentor at my zone select camp, Olivia Smoliga. We actually had gone up. Actually, we had gone up the week before to watch women's NCAA's one day of it, and then the next week we went to go see men's NCAA's. But I remember I got to like see Olivia swim because she was my mentor like 2013 at my zone select camp. So that was cool to see her as like a friend and as like a role model, and then now as a peer too. Um, but it was cool to see Arizona State, the men at that meet do so well in person and be like, okay, like this is where I'm going to be next year. And I'm going to be down there on the deck contributing. And so that whole first year was pretty challenging being away from home a little bit. At first, just it was different. I didn't go home at the end of the day to see my family. They were 1,500 miles away, or that's the distance I kind of say now at least. But that was like the vague and general distance that I knew. And so it quickly became home to me and just the family environment that I was really fostered in out here. And that's from Coach Bowman, Derek Schmidt, also at the time, Coach Kessler, Dan Kessler, and Coach Mike Joyce as well. And then I was kind of formed my relationship later in the summer with Coach Rachel Stratton Mills. And it was really neat to be out there at the same time as my brother, because he was in the MBA program getting his degree, furthering his degree, his graduate degree in school. And so he had, I guess, received a scholarship offer from ASU, the MBA program, for a full ride for 2 years, their program length. And my whole family, and this is something I'm very appreciative of too and think is really neat, is my whole family knew about this. My whole family knew Kyle was going to Arizona State, and he was going to be a Sun Devil, but no one told me at any point. And so but the sentiment was that they didn't want me. They knew how much Kyle and I meant to each other, at least Kyle meant to me, and they knew how influential he was. And if I had had that information, like there's no doubt in my mind, it would have been one track mind at that point. Mm-hmm. So they kind of withheld that from me, which I don't disagree with at all. I'm very appreciative that they did, that they let me kind of choose that decision unbiasedly, because I'd kind of fallen into my parents' like coaching when I was younger. I kind of went to the club team because my mom was there and it was a better opportunity again. And then St. X was like my choice too, but they kind of were like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Brought it to me. But the college recruiting process was something that I finally like really got to make a decision on. For me, that was ultimately solely my decision and my selection. Because I think my mom and dad had told me one day, they're like, you know what, when you go to bed and when you wake up and go to morning practice in the morning, she's like, you need to be somewhere where you're not going to dread that. You're not going to dread getting up in the morning and going. She's like, that's something to think about, like where you're going to be happiest and where you're going to enjoy going to bed and waking up every morning. And that was something that I kind of carried with every trip. I think it's true for anyone looking for a school, honestly. But when I committed to ASU, Kyle that night gave me like a hug, and he's like, well, it looks like we're going to be together for 2 more years. So I was excited about that. That was nice to have him out here. He was we were both each other's, I guess, like kind of him more for me as safety net. We weren't a crutch by any means, but it was always nice to know, like, if I was dealing with something or if I just needed a different environment. I mean, we lived like 2 miles away from each other, so I would just bike to his apartment, and I could get a good meal, whether it be him buying it for me or us cooking together, or him cooking, or maybe me cooking one night. And so that was nice to just have that there for each other, I think, especially maybe more so than I realized Kyle's first year. But then his second year, he really like came into his own in a different light that I'd ever seen him before, and got to see him. And I really enjoyed that, and that made me happy. But my first year was very, very enjoyable. The seniors I had that year, Reed Elliott, Christian Lorenz, Patrick Park, Andrew Porter for the men's side. I mean, they meant the world to me. They helped guide me along and helped directed me and just educated me on the daily, whether it was humbling me on the daily, whether it was helping me improve on the daily, whatever it was. I felt like each of them benefited me and helped me become a better person each day in and out of the pool. So much just so that like even now on my podcast, I've been trying to get interviews with all of them and just kind of sharing their stories as a way to give back to them and give a little bit of insight of what they meant to me to, I guess, anyone else who listens to it, of course, but just like a way to kind of thank them and for all they've done for me and continue to do for me. But the end of that season, it was in Minnesota, and that definitely did not go the way we had hoped. In many ways, we had a couple individual swimmers disqualified. We had races disqualified. Our relays didn't perform as well as we had hoped. Our Pac-12s was pretty solid. It was pretty good for me. I got switched out of some events right before the meet, which I wasn't too enthused about. But my bottom line was wherever the team needs me, and that's what I'd said all season. So I kind of made that bed, and I knew I had to sleep in it. So that was fine with me. Unfortunately, I didn't perform as well as I wanted to for the team in those events, but nonetheless, I still did contribute points and still did step up when I needed to in those instances. And then on to NCAAs. Wasn't the best performances for our team, but still there were steps in the right direction in some aspects. We got a couple team records. I improved my time, even if just marginally. I finaled, and I think it was in the B final as well for the 200 freestyle. So not as luxurious as I had envisioned, but learning for sure and realizing the whole season was just realizing it's not just a big fish and I don't consider Ohio a small pond, but it's a big fish in a big pond of sharks. So you quickly realize that in dual meets. But it's a different level when you get to conference and NCAA, and there's nothing really you can do except rise to the occasion or crumble. And when you're in that moment, and definitely realizing it for me, was the first night of the 800 free relay where I had the fastest split on the relay of the team. Cameron Craig and I think we're like a tenth or two apart. But to be so inconsequential in regards to the entire heat or the meet, I think as I swung to go in second, I had heard new American record Blake Peroni, or there's someone I forget whoever led off that relay. It was IU.
I think it was blank.
Yeah, I think it was IU and NC State, and NC State I think still has the record from that. That meet, which was just insane. But I mean, I went in and I heard that, and that was exciting for me to hear. But I was I wasn't aware of what was going on besides me, other than swimming as best I can and beating the guy next to me. But and looking back on it, there's no one looking at lane 8 other than our team, and there's nothing that we could do to change that. It was ample amount of time off, if not a whole a whole length.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that was the realizing factor of wow, this is the real deal. This is, I mean, Bob says it all the time, this is arguably, even Olympic gold medalists have hard times at NCAAs. This is the fastest meet in the world. Obviously the Olympics have their spot, but I mean, you get to the NCAA championships and you're seeing Olympians struggle to make A finals, struggle to make it back, and it's crazy. But it is eye-opening, and that kind of fueled maybe a frustration, fueled a fire in me that summer, to where I just put my head down and went, and it paid huge dividends. I was just motivated every day. I was on a different level than I'd ever operated before. After seeing that, I wanted to see if I could get to that level, whether I did or didn't. I just had to find out. And so I think there's no better person to welcome that than Bob, at least to that mentality. And there was definitely days where I got pretty fiery with some of my teammates and coaches, but I think they understood that it was just because I was trying to figure that out, trying to learn a little bit. So Bob always makes the analogy of me like burning a candle. There's like different kind of colors and hues on a candle, and you can't always burn at like the middle. You can't always burn at the brightest, the white, like a white flame. And that's something I'm definitely like still learning through and whatnot. But that summer I really understood how to train and how to perform, and not just be kind of a swimmer, but be an elite performer. And it's still kind of an ongoing joke that I'm just a water polo player who swims. But that was the summer where they kind of all acknowledged, like, oh, he's finally starting to look like a swimmer. So I think it's a true testament of just like I really came into my own that summer. I remember there was 1 week where it was just like the mornings were just relentless. So I think it was like we averaged like 8,000 meters in the morning, going double, single, double, single, double. And then that was just the 1 week. And then we left for Colorado Springs like a week later or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it was like building up to that big point. So when we got to Colorado, we could just get down performing, and we had the base, we had the foundation, and up there was just how can you perform and race the best in that environment. And so when I was up there, like I'm beyond grateful, and I think it was like one of the coolest spots I could ever be in. A couple of the guys from Georgia came up, Nick Fink, Pace Clark, Jay Llewellyn, Kevin Llewellyn. Chuck Cadis was actually there at the time. Kevin Cordes was there too. We had Rasuke Rie come and train with us, which was that was insane. There's a couple other girls I think I'm missing, but Allison Schmidt was up there, and then we had our Arizona State squad. So it was kind of funny, like we were kind of like the bottom of the barrel, the actual like ASU guys and girls. But what I loved is like every day we came there to try to prove ourselves to the older people or the older Georgia guys, or maybe not prove ourselves, but like, hey, I'm here, I can race, and I'll do what I need to take to like beat you. Mm-hmm. And I think that kept them honest too and pushed them harder, and was a good energy. But every day, like every single lap, I would have a race and a challenge and just an opportunity to learn. And I think that was huge for me. And that was ultimately Connor Dwyer was also there. He was a role model for me growing up. And it was neat. Like I remember vividly one practice with one of my roommates, Liam Brissett. It was Liam, Connor, me, and we were just going at it. 50s. I think I'm not sure if we had suits on or not, but just repeat 50s. I think one of the more renowned set for Bob, the Grant Hackett set. And so they told me they're like the GH set. And so I love that set. I think it's great, especially in that environment of like.
What is the set?
So the set, it goes 1650s straight into 1250s to 850s to 450s. Mm-hmm. So the 1650s long course, I think it's the same cycle as long course and short course, but long course, it's 1650s on a 45. Every fourth is fast, max effort.
Okay.
And then you go into 1250s on a 50-second cycle, every third fast. Mm-hmm. And then 850s on a 55, every other fast. And then culminating to 450s all fast on a minute for freestyle, backstroke, and butterfly. Breaststroke, I think, is like a little slower. Okay. But I guess the pro trick or advice is to realize that at the end of the set there's 5 in a row. It's not just 4 in a row. Right. It subtly creeps up on you if you're not paying attention. But that practice um, I was racing Connor and Liam. I think Liam won the first one, and that pissed Connor off because Liam and I kind of both beat him, but Liam smacked me, and that was like my smack to wake up. And so Bob kind of like got into it with us after he saw that. Like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like the realization of like Liam and I are here to go today, or what. But after that, it was just like each rep, like even the easy was a little bit faster after that. And that was just so fun for me to be swimming against one of my role models, one of my best friends, roommates now, and just getting a lot of work and learning what that level is like, even when you're hurting so bad. I think like the air circulation wasn't working. The vents were closed. The fans weren't on that day or something. So we're already at altitude, and the air is already like enough of an issue. But it's like not circulating. It's super stale. And there's like this one point where Liam and we were telling Bob about it, but there's nothing he can do. No, there's nothing any of us can do. And that was like a moment of, all right, we're here. We just got to deal with it. And I remember like Connor and I were kind of talking back and forth, like chirping at each other. And he like made something about a complaint about the air, which was valid, but there's no point in doing it after a certain point. I was like, I'm done complaining. Like I need to get my oxygen on the wall. Mm-hmm. And I definitely barked something at him. I was like, it doesn't like effing matter or something like this, or like get over it, drama queen or something like that. And so that just like fueled the fire on that too. And so we just started, even after that, just kind of trading blows. But afterwards, he like after the set, we like ate together and we talked, and he was like super impressed, and that was very profound for me. And he just like that was a very, very neat and surreal experience in that. And later on in the camp, we had another one where it was a set where I think Connor had gone home at that point, because he had already been up there for like a week and a half before us, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he had gone back, and so it was just me, and obviously the ASU people and some Georgia guys too. But all I remember is just me, Bob, and I. That's all I remember in this like one instance. And it was another one of Bob's favorite sets. It's my favorite set. I think it's called KDS, Kick Drill Swim. And so you just kick a 50 with the board. It's all on a 130, and then you drill a 50 on a 130, mm-hmm. and then you get out or stand, depending on what the deal is that day, and you go 50 as fast as you possibly max out. And we had suits on that day too. Bob told us to suit up, and we did KDS. So I'm like, this is gonna be sweet. I get to race. I get my suit on. I get my favorite set. Like, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And so the first one, the first fast one, I did all right. It was like around my best time. And Bob like kind of lays into me. He's like, you did this time last week, like pushing, like this is like, you need to be out like in your 200. This isn't going to cut it. And so I was like, I thought that was pretty good. And I kind of got mad too. And so I didn't talk to him for like a couple. And then after that, the next one, like I was like on a mission. I was like, if that wasn't good enough, like I'll show you good enough. And so every single one after that was a best time for me. Not just like in that practice, like a best 50 freestyle time ever. And it just kept going down and down and down and down. And to this point where like it was getting like really intense, and Bob was staying on me and pushing me and like helping me get there. And I kind of like blew up on him afterwards. I was like, well, like this is the best I have. And afterwards we like kind of talked, and he's like, hey, like great job. I only pushed you because I know you could do it. And like, you didn't show that at first. And I know, and you need to, because you deserve to. So that was like another moment where I was like, I'd never performed to that level before. And as we were closing the camp, I was like, I can do something really special this summer. And so we went back.
So what did you end up getting down to in this 50s?
I think I ended up at the time getting down to like a 23.4 or 5 at the time. And I never even broke a 24.5 in my 50 free before at that point. I mean, sprinting long course was not my forte. I mean, short course, I said I won a 19.7 my freshman year, but didn't really get back to that for a while. That's that like sprinting prowess. And so that day I remember I got down to like a new best time by like almost a second and a half, like 23.4 or something. And so coming back down from altitude, we have like our week at home, and before nationals, I think it's like 16 days before, and we get to like Saturday, and Bob had told us we were going to suit up and we were going to go fast, which are my two favorite words in a sentence. And so I was really excited for that day, and it was going to be a 200, a 100, or 150 and a 100, and every single, and I just had NCAAs too, like 3 or 4 months prior, so I had like relevant times. Mm-hmm. And I remember that day was like the final piece where maybe it gave me overconfidence, but I think I performed at nationals to what I had earned and what I had worked for. Again, like maybe it wanted to do better in some aspects, but I've always been a little greedy. But that practice, I think the 200, I went faster than I did at NCAAs. I went under a 133. Liam was like right there with me. The 100, I went a best time in the 100. I think we'd gone to and then the 150, I don't know. It was good. I don't know what the times are good or not for 150. But actually, now that I remember it, the week before was the Columbus Pro Series meet. I forgot that. That was kind of like the tune-up before nationals. And in the morning, I did kind of poorly in the 4 free, or at least that's what it like felt like I did. I was kind of like a little pumped about it because it was like my fastest 4 free in a while. Mm-hmm. But the coaches and some of the swimmers were like, dude, what the heck? Like that, you're way better than that. So at finals, I just Bob told me, he's like, you have the green light. He's like, there's nothing. He's like, I just want you to take it out. He's like, that's all I care about. I don't care about the final time. He's like, just trust yourself, trust the training, and just take it out. And so that's kind of like a saying we have for me now is like, green light is like, just go. I mean, it's simple, but it's just something I think about to that time. And I was like, all right, Bob, I'll take it out. And he's like, if you don't go out in a 26 or faster, I'm not watching your race. And so sure as heck, like I was out in like a 26.2 and the 400 free, and went like a best time by like 2 seconds after coming down from altitude, being broken down, and performing really well there. And then the rest of me was just like that. I mean, it was best times that I haven't gone since, that 2015 season when I did really well. And then after my 200 freestyle, I'd gone and done like, I think in Columbus I went a 148. And so I swam against Zane Grothy at that, and I got third at the Pro Series. And I remember afterwards in the warm down, Zane came and found me, and this is kind of where our like friendship started, I guess you could say. But he was like, dude, that was so cool. Like he was very, very supportive of me. He had ran me down, just tracked me down on the last lap, and out-touched me by a good amount. But he's like, dude, if you're doing whatever my time was, a 49 or 48, you're doing that right now. Like he's like, dude, I'd be scared. I'm scared in July or August, whenever nationals were. So that was a huge motivating factor. And at the time, he's like, yeah, you're going to go like a 146, 8 or something at nationals. I was like, dang, like that's pretty cool. All right. So that was like another level of belief I gained in myself too. And then after the meet went great. It was my best meet in years, especially long course. And then after that, we went back. We did a racing at the end of that week, short course, like I spoke about. That was exciting. And that was kind of the final moment where I was just like, this summer's going to be good. I know it is. And so nationals went great. Ended up going a 146.9 in my 200 freestyle. I was in the B final, which I was very upset with myself about. There wasn't any reason to be upset, really, because I hadn't done what I needed to in the morning. I had dropped a second and a half in my best time in the 200 freestyle in the morning, and that was by far probably even still to date my best preliminary swim ever. And it just like wasn't good enough, and that really made me upset. Like my best was not still good enough, and that year was like exceptionally fast. I believe, in my opinion, and so like a 1:48.0 got me like 16th, and so I was on an outside lane, and I honestly don't remember being in the little ready room walking out. I don't remember hearing the whistle blowing. I just remember getting in my lane, patting my block down, taking a breath, and then like we were going. Like it felt very rushed, but that was one of my best swims of the meet, 1:46.9. I think I got fifth overall, maybe fifth or sixth overall. Won the B final. Maxine was in it again too, so that was like added motivation to have a friend there and wanting to beat each other. I think we were right next to each other, and then the rest of the meet just kind of carried on with that. The next day was the 400 freestyle, and I was pretty maybe high on my horse after the 200 freestyle and after the Columbus 400, and I got given the green light again, and so taper Grant plus green light is a lethal combo sometimes for myself, but I didn't know it until after the fact, when I just completely shut down at the end. Still the best time by like a second and a half, but at the 150 mark, at the 100, I was a second plus under world record pace. And then at the 50, I think I was like right there. But then like after the 150, it took a hard nosedive. And I remember Bob like beelined over to me after the race because he could tell I was going to be pretty bummed, even though I won a best time. And he's like, well, you put it out there. You made sure you leave it in the pool. And so that was like, I think a really defining moment for like the relationship between Bob and I, because I was so like upset with myself. And if he had been like, what were you doing? Like, I think things would have not gone the way the rest of the meet. But I was just so grateful to have someone be so proud that I like gave it my best effort. Maybe not the smartest way, but I definitely gave it my best effort. And that was really cool sentiment from all the coaches as well. And let me kind of like, 400, I didn't make it back. I know I could have swam it faster and swam it better to go faster, but I didn't. And I just had to deal with that and move on to the next thing. So did everything I needed to do to recover, moved on to the next day. And I think that was 200 IM. I dropped like 2 seconds in that event. So that whole summer, I think I started out at like a 2:05. And then every single meet I swam after that, I got faster, which was pretty surreal. Actually, after the first meet, in the morning at Mesa, I had gone like really slow and like 2:14, 2:15 or something like that. And then at night, I think I swam pretty decent. I forget the time, but it was almost the best time. And then just throughout the season, it just slowly trickled away, like 2:05.0, 2:04, 2:02 high, 2:02 low, and then at prelims at nationals, 2:00, and then at finals at nationals, 2:00.03. So I wanted to break 2 minutes so bad, but didn't have it in the tank that day. So I remember I was super pumped because I got to race Will Cone. He was in the lane next to me. He was a big guy at Texas that I'd said I'd watched, and he was a big reason I was almost ended up at Texas. And then almost like I could go on a whole another tangent about Carson Foster, but he's like a younger brother that I never had. And so our relationship is, on the daily communicating, but got to race with him. Luca, I don't know him the best, but we always talk at meets. And obviously I respect what he's able to do and what he's capable of. But that was a fun heat to race, in a good way to end the meet. Wanted to break 2 minutes, but I was like, well, I improved 5 seconds in the summer. I was like, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I guess moving on to now, that kind of had my motivation sparks kind of towards the NCAA's of my sophomore year. It again wasn't as I had envisioned, but it was a lot better. Pac-12s was great performances for me, kind of some new grounds. I swam the 200 breaststroke at Pac-12s. So that was fun. That was, again, just where the team needed me. Should have swam the 100 freestyle that year, but so be it. It was a call Bob and I had. It was just like, what do you want to swim today or tomorrow? 200 breaststroke or 100 freestyle? I was like, I'll swim what you need me to do, Bob. He's like, no, what does Grant House want to swim? He's like, either way, we need help. So like, which is best? And I was like, I'll do the 200 breaststroke. And then we saw the preliminary times in the 100 freestyle, and I would have been like second seed or something. And I was like, oh well, but it was still fun. It was best times the whole meet, which I mean is a rarity in our sport again. And the NCAA's went better. Still learning at that meet, but it was better, more exciting for our team. Was All-American top 8 in our four free relay again. So the last event, so went out on a positive note, because the year before, ASU didn't even get the chance to swim again. We didn't even finish the meet technically. The last day we had no finalist in Minnesota. Our 4 free, we had scratched everyone who was in the 100 free to try to make it back top 8, and then we didn't even make it back. And our backstroker, Zach Cody, had miraculously made NCs and been at NCs with mono. And still almost like I think he was in B final or something, still in like a 140 with mono. Like that, he's one of the craziest swimmers I've ever met, like just talent-wise and performance-wise, honestly. I think I'll award him most underrated swimmer in the world, but that's my bias, of course. But the next year it was a lot better. And basically the summer was pretty challenging. It was a little different. We had construction on our pool. So we were up at Colorado Springs for a long time, 8 weeks total. I think it was like 8.5 with travel. And so that wasn't the best. That was definitely way too long for me, speaking personally, but we didn't really have another option.
Mm-hmm.
The only other situation we had was going to like some pool, like 30 minutes away from me. And we had pool time starting at 5:15 a.m. and we had it till like 7:30, I think. Or 7:15. I don't know. It was like very, very odd hours, very early hours. So I had to get up at like 4:30 to get like my stuff together, get food. And then because we weren't at ASU, I had to go drive and pick up two teammates so they could get to practice. Zach Cody was one of them. Cody Bybee was another. But I had a car out here, so I had to drive them. It was just a pretty big, I would say a hassle to do what we came here to do, but it was just not the most ideal circumstances. But I love the pool. It made me think of like club swimming, like when I was 10. Very like, while everyone was complaining, I was smiling. I loved it. It was very reminiscent for me. But that summer was pretty hard, pretty challenging, but I was just trying to prepare as well as I can to represent the United States as proudly as I could. With World University Games and then Pan American Games as well. So that was a really neat experience for me. And just preparing for that and learning how to prepare for those types of meets, especially having someone like Allison Schmidt there to help me along, Bob as well. So that summer was a little different, and I guess transitioning into this year, I'd kind of been seeing it for a little bit, but I was like, well, if I qualified for these meets being in school, then I was like, I think I'd probably be better, and if I could spend more time focusing on that, and it would just be exponential. And so the fall was really great. Like I was training strength wise in the pool to a level that I didn't know I could. especially endurance wise. And I felt like it was just this huge like summit, and we were just going to come down when like not taper in February, but like start performing at a different capacity with more intensity into the summer. I was like, if I have this base now, then I'll be able to do what I need to do when the time counts. And so in the fall, I've kind of kept this under wraps a little bit, but I actually suffered 2 stress fractures in the right side of my rib, and so that was just from like overworking, I guess. They said it was a stress fracture, and that's what that is, overtraining, and a very uncommon place for swimmers. But I wasn't increasing my training load, the load on my body, and I was recovering and sleeping more, but I guess not enough. So I was in like the weight room doing an exercise, and just like different forces at different times, and something gave. Done it hundreds, if not thousands of times, that exercise, but just body didn't want to move in a certain way that day. So that kind of put things on a very big speed bump for me, mentally, emotionally, physically. I didn't acknowledge it at first. We finished up that workout that day. It was on a Saturday, and then I just felt like I had the wind knocked out of me. I wasn't thinking anything too serious had happened. And the next day I went in to do open swim at our pool, and I couldn't do, I'll say 3.5 of the strokes, because I could breathe to my left side on freestyle with pain, but the other 3 just felt like someone was jabbing a pencil into my sternum and my chest, as hard as they could. And so I went into our trainers and whatnot, and we kind of tried to deal with it a little bit, but it just wouldn't subside. And the next week, I had to start getting out of boss practices. Like, Bob, I can't do this today. Like I'm trying as much as I can, but I think I'm harming myself at this point. And so that's when Bob kind of stepped in, and we got x-rays and MRIs, and they revealed like the double stress fracture. So it kind of provided some reasoning. And then because of the Olympic year, at least in my mind, I didn't think I could afford time off. Little did we know. But I knew if I couldn't swim with my upper body, I was going to swim as much as I could with my lower body. So I kicked for 4 weeks in the water, only kicking. I only did lower body in the weight room, lower body and left arm stuff in the weight room, and then biking too in the weight room after practices that I get out of after I reached my limit or my threshold for the day from the coaches. So that went on for a little bit. Then we started slowly reintegrating me back into swimming full time and strength stuff. And then went to U.S. Open and at Georgia Tech. That was pretty underwhelming for me. I guess it was just my first competition back, but I want to be competing with, when I see people going fast, I want to be up there with them, because that's where I want to be. But it was getting back to shape, getting back to form. And then by the end of December, I was back to full training, with only like marginal hiccups here or there. And I was glad to be back. And so we kind of continued on, and I went to a meet in January, at Knoxville. And that was, in my mind, even worse than U.S. Open. I think I was just so broken down at that point, which is fine if the peak is at Olympic trials, which it should be. But after that, it was like, even for me, who doesn't typically swim like that fast in season, broken down, was very bad. And so after that, Bob and I talked, and he's like, we got to make some changes. He's like, it might be in like in your mind like a risk, but he's like, I think this is going to help a lot. So after that meet, I got moved to sprint squad with Herbie Beam, and that was my first time ever like actually doing sprint work, other than like racing, which I think is the ultimate sprint work, but like specified, individualized, and like geared towards just finding a new maximal output for me. And that was really helpful for me, especially after the fall of having the injury. having like the disappointing meets back to back, and really like realign my mental state and emotional state with the sport of swimming again. And just for my own personal health. I'm a big advocate of mental health and well-being, and it was different to be on the other side of that, not the happy-go-lucky guy and the guy you could go to for confident conversations and just to talk, and for me to be just there to listen, but to be on the other side of that for one of the few times. So working through that, I went to Des Moines, won a best time in my 50, won a best time in my 100, won a best time, my second best time ever in the 200 IM, like by 100th. Second best time ever in the 100 fly, best time in like a year in the 200 freestyle. And I was competing, and I was racing these guys who I thought I should be and who I want to be, and ultimately, beating, but or I ultimately want to be beating, but I was finally competing back to where I thought I should be, my expectation, I guess, if you may, but where I wanted to be, where my desire was, and going in the way that I could, even if it was a couple tenths here or there faster, it was faster, and that's huge for me. So that kind of put us back into Tempe, and then things started happening with quarantine. I kind of ended things in a relationship around that time, about a month before too. So like going into quarantine, I was kind of already like going from a relationship where it's a couple, and then kind of going into solitude or like more to myself. And then in quarantine, it's like definitely like solitude. So it was, honestly, I think it was a good combination. I was really not concerned, but I was like, dang, this is going to be rather unfortunate combo here. But it forced me into a level of introspection that I never thought I could get at with having swimming, and maybe don't know if, I think once we get back into it, I want to do my best to maintain what I've been doing during this period of reflection and growth and mental development. But that's really what has helped me in this time mature and develop so much, is having that solitude, that introspection. I think I had a little different experience than most people my age too. I think that's going back to the initial conversation of having the older peer group. So being in kind of that field rather than my maybe like a typical 21-year-old. But I had people like Brad Tandy here. I had people, Giles Smith, Allison Schmidt, Haley Flickinger, Amy Bilquist, Peyton Sorensen as well, and Bob, of course, and Herbie. So, the list goes on and on of these people who, Allison, Brad, Giles, they're 28, 29, almost into their 30s. So more towards like what I've grown up with, my brother, my sister, Haley and Amy, a little younger, more towards their mid-20s, but they had so much perspective and so much more experience than I had even thus far, that each day, I remember Giles saying like, yeah, there's no way trials are happening. And I was like, okay, guy, like, sure. Like, no way this is going to happen. And each day after that, we kind of like talked a little bit more about it. We see some in the news, talk it over. So 3 weeks later, they ended up canceling trials. And obviously we know now the Olympic trials and the Olympics postponed. So, and to be decided if that day will even come next year at this point. But because of those individuals, I honestly feel forever grateful for, not just because of that, but for what they've given me the last year since being on this journey with them, is just a more sound perspective of it's going to be okay. This too shall pass, and all we can do is control the controllables of ourselves. And move to each day and give our best effort. Because once the decision came that they were canceled, in my mind it was like, well, why? Like there's a lot of people who are probably just like, well, why are we even training? And to me, it was just became more relaxed environment, honestly. Like rather than, I guess for the direct postponement, it was rather than 2 months away, 3 months away, it was 15, 16 months away. It's like, okay, can kind of calm down a little bit. But each day at practice, because fortunately we were able to practice there was like a SwimSwam article about it, but like we were able to practice pretty far, like 2.5 weeks in, like after most were done, or 3 weeks, which was very fortunate. But Arizona was just in a good spot, I think, geographically and everything out here.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the pro group that year, not attached to the college team, because if I would have been, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. And so taking the Olympic waiver kind of served a lot of unforeseen benefits. I didn't not expel, but use a year of eligibility. I still retained 2 more years of competitive athletic eligibility, academic ability, while some other people or anyone else who doesn't get to, unfortunately, because of the NCAA's rulings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also able to train even after that too, in a more structured manner. But every practice after that was like, I'd tell Herbie and Bob, like, it's just meditation. I'm not coming to practice today. Like, I'm coming to be in a meditative environment and improve. Like, it was so peaceful. It was surreal almost. Like it felt like the world was stopping when we got in that pool, because you didn't think about COVID. You didn't think about the pandemic. You just, it was a perspective of, I'm just happy to be here today. Like, I'm just happy to be alive. I'm happy to be healthy. I'm happy my family's healthy. These people, I get to enjoy this and experience this with my people and my friends and people who care about me. And so that's just a sentiment that I really started to carry forward and embraced, especially during this whole time, and was made a lot easier, I think, for me to kind of get on that mindset than something more negative because of people like I spoke about before: Haley, Amy, Allison, Brad, Giles, Peyton. So they've been everything helpful to me in this time.
Yeah, certainly. So to wrap up here, can you I'm not the only one with a podcast, obviously. how has having a podcast during this time helped your mental state as well?
Yeah, it's been great. I think it's been huge. This time, like I was talking about, is obviously without swimming. Yesterday was 7 weeks without water, officially on Tuesday. So it's really a chance for me, I realized, to pour my energy and time and commitments and discipline into aspects that I always have wanted to, or have in the past, and just lost the time commitment or lost the ability to do. And my podcast was one of those things. My brother and I are part on the country again, and so I'm kind of doing it solo dolo, and just kind of manning it myself with occasional assistance and help and questions from him. But it's really been neat to connect with people and hear their stories to even degrees that I didn't even know. Just kind of running through the background of what they have to say, and just getting to know people and having that connection of a conversation that is often remiss in a quarantine life, I guess. But it's really been neat to have that, to pour my energy into something I care about, to get out a message. I think everyone has a story, and I think everyone has a story to learn from. And it ultimately reached into like something I kind of started too with social media. I kind of got really appalled by social media at the start, because I just felt myself on it all the time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take a step back, and how can I turn this into a positive platform, and or at least a more productive platform. And so I started kind of doing like these, I called them at first like mini podcasts, but these like on Instagram IGTVs, and kind of putting those out as often as I can. At first it was like every day, and then it just seemed to kind of flow into a good, whenever it felt good, kind of state and schedule. And try to do one like every other day or so now. No necessity, but just something I think I've been told helps some people, and that's what that was my goal. I mean, it helps me doing them. I love doing it. It's fun for me. So I think if I can help one person, and when I get one message from someone saying like, this helped, or I really enjoyed this today, like during this time, I think that's what everyone's really needs and really wants. And I experienced that a lot through the podcast. So if you're interested in that, Swim Bros podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. So shameless plug there. Appreciate the support on that one, Coleman. But
absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's something that Kyle and I started, and I've been able to carry forward. And due to my discipline, I hope it won't fail me on my discipline, but I'll stay with it even when we get back into swimming. And now that I kind of know a couple more tricks of the trade, I can kind of do it with better diligency and more effectiveness in reaching out to people. So that it's really been fun to have that right now.
Well, awesome. Kyle, thank you so much for your time, your honesty, your vulnerability. I really appreciate you coming in to talk to me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It is my pleasure. And thank you for having me. I as one podcaster to another, appreciate it and love it. So yeah.
Did I just call you Kyle? I think I did.
You did.
Grant,
but it's all good. I'm surprised you caught yourself. But no, it's fine. I grew up. I kind of have the saying that I think I grew up being called Kyle more than my name of Grant. So I respond to it. It's an endearing name to me. So yeah, no worries. My mother gets it often wrong too. So it's no worries on that.
Same. Well, yeah. Again, Grant House. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Coleman. Thank you for this opportunity.
Hey, do you love SwimSwam as much as I do? Do you want hours of endless practice footage, race video, and a guide to the best pancakeries in the country? Then subscribe to our YouTube channel below. And follow us on social media at SwimSwam News on Twitter and Instagram. If we get 1 million followers, I might just eat 1 million pancakes. Only one way to find out.